So, Peter, we've talked about your career, we've talked about the military and the way that that's shaped Australia and those conflicts that have shaped Australia. And I want to talk about how that feeds into our national identity and the role of Anzac Day. I would say in some respects Anzac Day speaks to us in ways that even Australia Day doesn't. We know that there is great angst around Australia Day, particularly from Indigenous communities and others who also share those concerns about what it represents. But Anzac Day has taken on such a solemnity. People approach that in different ways, and as an Indigenous person, I can stand there and remember my grandfather as an Indigenous rat of Tobruk, and his brother who died in the fields of France, and my cousin who serves in the military today. Is Anzac Day really, in a way, our Australia Day?
Anzac Day is one of the great days in Australia. I mean, there's the conventional holidays. There's Australia Day, which, celebrates a date, and in some cases it actually mourns. For some, they mourn the date. We've got to find a way to knit those together so we can have great respect to note a milestone in the modern history of Australia, because the ancient history of Australia belongs wholly and solely to first Australians. And we should embrace that, bring it forward, and do what we can to understand that. So Australia Day, we'll park for a moment. Anzac Day has no arguments that it is for all Australians to say, on this national day, we talk about the Australia that expressed itself in the international arena through the terrible crucible of wars, but it said, we care, we count, we will help.
And yet, even on Anzac Day, we define ourselves and we see ourselves through those conflicts. As I say, Indigenous people have proudly served in all of those conflicts, but there is still the question of frontier wars.
Yeah.
Could you see a frontier war or recognition of the battles that took place on this land as part of that commemoration?
It's a hard one because it's something that I think has to arrive. I would rather that the events that we do on Australia Day take into account not just the meeting of the arriving cultures with the ancient first cultures, but the friction that led up to the end of what might be called internal conflict. So that doesn't mean that the end of that reported conflict is the end of the struggle. Far from it. We still need to recognise that.
But you think that's more appropriate incorporated into an Australia Day remembrance, commemoration, whatever people want to call it, celebration, than it is as part of Anzac Day?
Anzac Day, because it contains New Zealand, springs from a certain memory, would probably say that was not done on our shores. There was no Anzac until it was perpetrated in Gallipoli. And from that point on, it became emblematic in both nations to that expression of international authenticity. It's chosen because it's not that we had a good speech in the League of Nations or we had a particularly fine High Commissioner in London. It speaks about the fact that no greater expression of a nation's involvement in defending other people's values it can be done than to send your men and women. And from that point of view, I think we say that Anzac title stops at our shores.